Sectarianism has always been feared and misunderstood by most people, but nevertheless, sects have not become less. And what's worse, some of them can even be equated to terrorist organizations that could almost kill more than 6,000 people at a time. In this video, I will talk about some of the most terrifying sects that have shocked with their extreme rituals, devil worship, and sacrifices. Some of these most frightening and bizarre sects still exist today. I recommend not turning this video on at night. Let's go. One of the most infamous sects in world history is the Temple of Nations, led by Jim Jones. Established in the year 1995 in Indianapolis, USA, this cult originally proposed social justice and a utopian society, just like our politicians. However, over time, Jones began to demonstrate paranoia and authoritarianism, which is even more like our politicians, isn't it? But then it got ugly. In the year 1977, Jones moved his followers to Guyana, a country on the coast of South America, washed by the Atlantic Ocean. And what do you think they decided to do on the beautiful ocean? Sip cocktails and enjoy nature? No. That's where they founded the dreaded settlement of Jonestown. In this village, cult members regularly participated in revolutionary suicides. This was the name given to rituals where they practiced drinking poison at the behest of the Joneses. Although the poison was most often replaced with harmless substances, these practices only strengthened Jones's control over the sect members. He used psychological and physical violence to keep his followers in fear and subjugation. Jones staged night marches, searches, and public punishments, but the worst happened next. In 1978, following a police investigation into living conditions in Jonestown, Jones ordered his followers to commit mass suicide by drinking cyanide. Over 900 people died as a result, including many women and children. This became one of the most mass suicides in modern history. The leader himself also drank the poison, either out of fear of punishment or because he had gone completely off the rails. But let's move from 1978th year to our time. We're going to talk about the New Heaven and New Earth sect. It was founded in South Korea by a certain Lee Man-hee in 1984th year. Not surprisingly, Lee Man-hee claims to be the promised pastor who will lead his followers to salvation. Well, where else would he go? It is amazing that 40 years into its existence, this sect is still active and attracting new followers despite the many accusations and investigations against it. New Heaven and New Earth has attracted media and police attention because of the many allegations of financial fraud, manipulation, and abuse of members. Just in the year 2020, the sect was accused of covering up information about an outbreak of COVID-19 among its followers, leading to a mass infection. It is said that it was his flock that spread the new coronavirus in South Korea. Members of this sect regularly participate in mass prayer meetings where they are supposed to express their total devotion to Lee Man-hee. These meetings are often accompanied by hypnotic practices and public confessions where members are forced to reveal their deepest secrets. Lee Man-hee claims that through these rituals he can obtain the spiritual energy needed to save the world. 88-year-old Lee Man-hee calls himself the biblical Messiah. He claims that Judgment Day will come in his lifetime, at which time 144,000 of his followers will ascend to heaven with him. Lee Man-hee is not the only one waiting for the apocalypse. The Order of the Solar Temple was founded in the year 1984 by Joseph D. Mambro and Luke Jure. These two friends promoted apocalyptic and occult beliefs, claiming that the end of the world is near. Apparently, since the last one was not coming, they decided to organize ritual murders and suicides. Since 1994 in different countries began to find many bodies of followers of the Order of the Solar Temple, who died as a result of ritual murder and suicide. In 1994 in Switzerland and Canada were found more than 50 bodies, and in 1995 another 16 bodies in Vancouver. The sect members believed that through ritual sacrifice and suicide, they could ascend to a higher plane of existence. You know, like, we as martyrs will go to heaven, and everyone else will just die. One of the creepiest rituals of this sect was the fire circle ritual, in which participants would gather around a fire and lead a choral chant before collectively committing suicide or killing tribesmen. The branch of David, better known as the David Koresh sect, also gained attention in the early 90s. Koresh, whose real name was Vernon Howell, proclaimed himself a prophet and took control of the Mount Carmel Ranch in Texas. But that was at the end, and so Koresh convinced his followers that he was the Lamb of God and had the right to polygamy, including marriage to underage girls, and outright rape. Typical Lamb of God, right? The sect members were subjected to a strict regime, including restricted communication with the outside world and constant military drills to prepare for some sort of final battle, which happened at Mount Carmel Ranch. In 1993, the ranch was besieged by the FBI after reports of illegal gun possession and sexual abuse. And you wouldn't believe it, but there was an unimaginable amount of both the former, i.e. guns, and the latter, i.e. perverted orgies. Imagine, the siege lasted 51 days, and it ended tragically. The ranch caught fire and 76 people, including Koresh, were burned alive. Of course, it's impossible not to mention, as I think, one of the creepiest sects in existence, Aum Shinrikyo, in this selection. The Japanese sect, founded by Shoko Asahara in 1984, combined Buddhism, Hinduism, and apocalyptic ideas. Well, not without them. Asahara claimed to be the incarnation of various gods and prophets. Only, as they say, he didn't fly. But this nutcase made Aum Shinrikyo members do some truly horrifying things, like dousing themselves with boiling water, or starve themselves for weeks. Despite this, the members believed that such suffering would purify their souls and prepare them for the apocalypse. Asahara also used hypnosis and drugs to control his followers. So why did I call Aum Shinrikyo the creepiest of the other sects? In 1995, its members carried out a sarin attack in the Tokyo subway system. After entering the public transportation system during rush hour, the sect members sprayed sarin, killing 13 people and injuring more than 6,000. Many of the victims continued to suffer the effects of the poisoning for years after the incident. Why did they do this? Aum Shinrikyo believed in the need to hasten the apocalypse and accomplish the purification of society. Asahara and other cult leaders were arrested and sentenced to death. Well, let's move away from such shocking topics to something sweet and peaceful, like the family of love. Can't have such a wonderful name for a group of people hiding something horrible underneath. Or can it? The Family of Love sect, also known as the Children of God, was founded by David Berg in 1968. Its members promote free love and sexual relations between members, and it's like, all is well, peace, love, flowers. But there's a catch. Their free love includes a lot of minors and children. At the peak of its influence in the late 70s and early 80s, the Family of Love sect had thousands of members. It was active in various countries and enticed people with its unusual teachings on love, sexuality, and spirituality. The Family of Love repeatedly attracted media and law enforcement attention because of numerous allegations of sexual abuse, exploitation, and misconduct. Former members of the sect have spoken out about forced sexual rituals and abuse. One of the most sinister rituals was flirty fishing, where cult members, including minors, were used for sexual favors as a method of attracting new followers and fundraising. So much for go sell yourself to that uncle for our great idea. And the saddest part is that children born into the cult were abused, resulting in trauma and psychological problems for many of them. By the way, the Family of Love still exists today, and although it has lost many members, but nevertheless, its cause lives on, and the organization is developing. Where are the police looking? Have you heard anything about our Black Jesus Christ? No? Then listen to this dark and creepy story. Black Jesus, a Papuan cannibal prophet, founded a sect in the mountains of Papua New Guinea in the early 2000s, where he proclaimed himself Jesus in the flesh, and gathered around him an army of followers whose faith was steeped in cruelty and bigotry. Stephen Tari, his real name, was born on Manus and began his mission after studying at a spiritual academy. Figured out how to gain influence among the hamsters, so to speak. Stephen decided to masterfully mix Christianity and local beliefs and push them on everyone around him. And it worked. He started gaining followers and even created his own almost castle. His cultist fortress of Matipi became the center of a mini empire of violence, rape, and cannibalism. Tari gathered an army of believers who thought he was a god and claimed to have supernatural powers. His followers, armed with machetes and guns, took over neighboring villages, killed locals, and kidnapped girls for the prophet's harem. And that was only some 20 years ago. The abducted women and girls were physically and psychologically abused by Tari himself and his apostles. At the peak of its popularity, the Black Jesus cult numbered up to 6,000 people. But his story also came to an end. In the year 2013, the locals, angered by the dictatorship of Tari and his followers, organized an armed rebellion against the cult. They captured the fortress of Matepi, where they found the living and the dead, including victims of rape and cannibalism. Tari himself was captured and killed by the locals in 2013, ending his tyranny and atrocities. The locals hated Tari so much that when they caught him, they chopped him up with knives, castrated him, and emptied his entrails. When forensic experts found the body, they were left with a tortured corpse, X, which only genetic testing could identify as Stephen Tari. Black Christ was already there, so it's time for Christ in female form. Yes, and this is practiced in Sects. Society of the White Brotherhood, founded in Ukraine by Maria Zvigun and candidate of technical sciences Yuri Krivonogov in 1989th year, preached the imminent end of the world and the arrival of the great teacher, Maria Devi Christ. As you understand, Maria Devi Christ became Maria Zvigun herself. Even more, she proclaimed herself to be both the living incarnation of Christ, his mother Virgin Mary, and his bride. Well, to be sure, Zvigun's doctrine states that God is mother and is a mixture of everything, a pinch of Christianity, a little bit of Judaism, flavored with Krishnaism, with the addition of Buddhism, and even the teachings of New Age. And everything would be all right. Let the fanatics have fun and God grant them health. But Zvigun and Krivonogov used hypnosis and psychological pressure to control their followers. Sect members participated in rituals that included public confessions and self-torture to purify themselves before the end of the world. And if a person managed to leave this sect, he or she had to spend about 2 years to rid themselves of their psychological influence. Also in the fall of 1993, a notable event related to the sect White Brotherhood took place in Kiev. Local police reportedly stopped a mass suicide attempt in which 666 people were detained, a number associated with the symbolism of the devil. It was suspected that sect leaders, including Marina Zvigun, were attempting to persuade adherents to commit group suicide, believing it was necessary to destroy the devil. Subsequently, in 1994, in Odessa, a case was recorded of a 26-year-old member of the sect killing an old woman neighbor who explained his act by the fact that she was supposedly possessed by the devil. After the arrest, it was revealed that the sect had other murders in its plans. However, the devil was never officially killed. In 1996, Zvigun was sentenced to 4 years in a penal colony, the formal head of the sect John Peter II, for 5 years. Nevertheless, in 2013, it was reported that Zvigun had re-established the White Brotherhood and began recruiting new members. In 2020th year, the White Brotherhood's sermons began circulating on YouTube. The stories of these terrifying sects show how dangerous it can be to participate in such organizations. Extreme beliefs, sacrifices, and psychological pressures can lead to tragic consequences. It is important to remember that sects can be very attractive to vulnerable people, but the consequences of joining such groups can be devastating to life and health. Be careful and always maintain critical thinking to avoid falling into the trap of such organizations. Friends, you have an opportunity to join our team. If you have video editing skills, can voice over videos in Russian, English, and other languages, or write interesting scripts, we will be glad to work with you. Link in the description.